Well, our last agenda item is going to be number 5, 21 South Linn Street discussion. And we have our city manager here to lead us in that discussion. And I also want to acknowledge that Councilor Josh Moe is recusing himself from this item. All right, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. I am really excited to be moving this project into the next phase. Today we're going to present to you a summary of the 3 proposals for the 21 South Linn Street property. But I want to start by hopefully saying something I'll say a couple of times during this presentation if I don't forget, and that's just how grateful I am to all the teams that submitted and to even those that were working on it but didn't get across the finish line and didn't submit. There is a ton of work that goes on behind the scenes to be able to submit the quality of proposals that we got through this process. And it's not only time and effort, it's financial resources as well. So I'm really grateful, and I think that speaks a lot about our community that we had multiple teams that kind of raised their hand and said, you know, I want to be a part of this next chapter in downtown Iowa City. That's really exciting. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to just give you a quick background on how we got to where we are today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the RFP document just to reorient ourselves with what we specifically asked for. We're going to go through a very high-level summary of the 3 responses and then open it up for your discussion and kind of deliberation on the next steps here. So I think everybody's familiar with the site, but for those watching, we are talking 21 South Linn Street, as pictured here on the screen. And several years ago, U.S. Bank, which previously owned this, you may recall there was a drive-through bank on this facility when it was a surface parking lot. They sold it to a out-of-state student housing development team that worked on a high-rise student-centric housing tower. That project made it all the way to building permit. That was ready to be built, but post-COVID, things changed for that company, and they no longer were pursuing that project. That was kind of late 2022 when I think that project started to slip away from that team. Once it was known that they were not going to pursue their project, staff started to field some inquiries from potential buyers, and it was pretty clear to us that was likely to transfer to another student housing developer that had similar intentions to build a high-rise tower. And in addition, we were getting a lot of inquiries about incorporating some of the properties immediately to the west of this site. You can see those on the top there, but some of these properties up here, we were getting inquiries about what if we acquired these and demolished these, and that's when staff started to really pause and think, what do we want? Is this a moment in time where maybe the city needs to step in and help guide the development in a way that's going to be better for the long-term health of downtown, both from the use standpoint, but also from just the economic standpoint as well. And as we reflected, over the last 15 to 20 years, the city's invested quite a bit in the downtown, and not just infrastructure, which we have, and the public spaces, which we're really proud of, but we've been really intentionally trying to diversify the uses downtown. That means introducing new housing types. That means increasing hotel rooms, really trying to shift to a stronger balance of commercial uses and not just kind of the late night bar uses, and really provide a downtown in which everybody feels like they're welcome, invited, and have a place. And we thought about that with this property, and ultimately with the council's support and approval, we decided to go out and purchase this property, which we did in August of 2023 with the intention to guide the project to a stronger use than what we felt the market was going to produce on its own. And really what we thought about and what we initially talked about right after the time of purchase is let's reflect back on a couple other recent examples in which the city did own property and we did pursue public-private partnerships for the betterment of downtown. And the most recent example, of course, is right behind you at the Chauncey, but you can also look at the Hotel Vetro and Bread Garden property, both cases in which the city owned the property and helped steer private development in a way that brought something new to downtown and also felt very accessible to everybody, despite it not being a publicly owned property anymore. So that's certainly what we had in mind, and after kind of familiarizing ourselves with those projects again, we set out on a public engagement and kind of planning effort that took place from February to June, really talking to the public and trying to understand what the public really wanted to see in this particular location. We presented those results to you and had good feedback from you. And then we started working on the actual RFP document. And towards the end of summer in 2024, we presented the RFP document, the request for proposal document, to you. We made some tweaks based on your feedback and was able to issue that in early September. During this time, you may recall, we also revisited the TIF policy, anticipating that TIF may be requested through this process as well, and the council worked through those changes as well. So the RFP, as I mentioned, was released in September of 2024. We provided 60 days for a response, so those were due back in early November, and for the last couple of months, staff has been reviewing those internally, which brings us here tonight. Any questions on the history and project background? Okay, we'll jump into the RFP document itself. This is pretty wordy, but in the blue side, that's taken straight from the RFP. We were very clear in the RFP, the purpose is to facilitate private redevelopment, and very clear that we had the long-term interests of downtown in mind. And we think we got to continue to kind of center what are we making decisions that are best for the long-term health of the community. We talked about the need to generate annual property tax income, and we just kind of forecasting tough budget times and knowing that some of these redevelopment opportunities can really provide a solid foundation that supports our services and our external partnerships with others in the community. And the third piece of that talks about the contextual development, just kind of working in concert with everything else around it. So specifically, we called out your strategic plan. We called out the vision for downtown and our downtown master plan. And we talked about really what we were looking for in the site without being very specific, trying to give those teams an opportunity to interpret that themselves and present their best and most creative ideas. We did talk about active and engaging first floor use, really making sure at the street level that this property was very active. That was one of our major concerns with the student-centric housing high-rise, would be that if you didn't live in that high-rise, you weren't really going to be engaging on that building, on that prominent corner at all, right? There wasn't going to be retail incorporated. There wasn't really going to be any commercial uses incorporated. It would be mostly amenities for the residents there, and we really wanted to look at this corner and say it really should have a very active streetscape there. We talked about a mix of housing types and different affordability levels for the residential uses. The council really stressed high construction standards and leadership in climate action, as well as the contextual architecture. We also talked about the importance of the submittal team's experience and capabilities and making sure that the project was going to be economically viable and a good long-term fiscal benefit to the city. So just a reminder of kind of what to expect at this. This is a slide that you've seen a couple of times in our earlier presentations. As you work through this process, the details will get more refined. You'll see with all of the proposals, there's different levels of specificity, but all of the respondents had said, of course we're flexible still, right? If the city, if a different priority emerges or another opportunity comes, everybody's somewhat flexible. in this. So just know now, you may not have all the answers. What's before you are not fully designed buildings, they're concepts, and there's ability for us to work with the teams to respond to changing market conditions, different interests that may emerge that maybe weren't there several months ago. And all of the teams are open to those types of discussions. Okay, I think we'll jump into the proposals, if you're ready for that.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to start with the grand rail, and we're just going to do this in alphabetical order, just like it was presented in the memo that you have in your packet. The grand rail proposal, as we've kind of said shorthand, also includes a number of other partners, includes Urban Acres, OPM, and Axiom Consultants as well. And we're going to just kind of walk you through each of these proposals at a high level. If you've got questions, feel free to jump in and ask for clarifications. They have proposed a mid-rise building, a 6-story building with steel frame construction and the goal of achieving LEED Silver. On the ground floor, they've anticipated 6,300 square feet of entertainment use. They do have letters of interest in their proposal from both the Englert Theater and the Stories Project. They have 3 floors of commercial office space on the upper floors. There's letters of interest from OPN and ACT, and they've certainly expressed a willingness to accommodate the city office needs should we decide to pursue that on this site. The 2 upper floors to round out the 6 total stories includes 20 residential units. Of that, 16 proposed at market rate and 4 proposed to be affordable. There is a letter of interest from the Housing Fellowship in here in regards to the affordable properties. There's also a letter of interest expressed from the University of Iowa International Writing Program, who has an interest in acquiring some or utilizing some of the units for potentially for short-term rentals to accommodate their program. There's also a rooftop amenity proposed that would serve the residential community. Staff has done some work to estimate what the total valuation for the property would be. We estimate this one to be valued at around $21.5 million. The proposal indicates an offer of $3 million to purchase the lot from the city. And at this time, they're not requesting any gap financing, typically tax increment financing. However, they have made it clear that should tenants need that in order for it to be viable, then we may have to work TIF into the project, either with those tenants directly or with the team. So you can think of whether it's the Englert Stories or other uses that may not be able to pay that market rate, that TIF may be needed to accommodate those types of uses. We'll just walk you through some of the images. I am not an architect, and I can't even pretend to be one. I am not going to describe the architecture to you. One of your next steps that I suggest is for the teams that you want to move forward, that you invite them to present, and certainly the architect teams can talk in detail about the architecture and how it fits in with the surrounding properties and the overall downtown district. I'll circle through these. A couple minutes to look at that. Got both the Washington Street and Linn Street elevations here. And then we'll move into the floor plans. So over here, you'll see the one level of underground parking to support the residential uses. And then this middle one would be your pedestrian level, or what we call on the ground floor. And then you can see the entertainment space here that kind of wraps on this corner, goes down Linn Street, and is serving a portion of Washington Street. The darker gray is going to be more of the corridor to service the residential and commercial users in that property. The second and third floor are presented over here. Again, this was presented as office space And I probably will say this a few times again. I mean it with everybody that they've all said that this is certainly flexible, right? If there's not going to be office demand for multiple floors, then they can convert that to residential. They can also expand and accommodate more if needed to. You see the fourth floor, kind of what a subdivided commercial space would look like with a little bit of an outdoor terrace where the building steps back. And then on the fifth and sixth floor, you have the same floor plan with the apartment layouts there. And then the rooftop amenity space is depicted on the far right there. Once we walk through all three of them, in the memo there was a summary table. We'll kind of end on that summary table, and we can compare and contrast if you want.
This one is showing 1 and 2 bedrooms. What is are there 3 and 4 bedrooms in their model?
No, not as presented, but I'm certain they would be flexible if that was a priority.
And did they identify if the affordable units were going to be 1 or 2 bedrooms?
I would have to get into that proposal, Mayor. I can look when we're done with this and see. I do believe that the affordable ones are noted on the pro forma, and I could look and see what those were designated.
I'll look back at it, but thank you.
Those are all certainly conversations. They would be flexible. I think they would, I mentioned the Housing Fellowship was noted, whether it was the Housing Fellowship or another nonprofit partner that they would work with. I think they would probably have more intentional discussions with them to see what they felt was needed in this particular location. Okay, moving to the Iceberg development proposal. The Iceberg team includes the Hodge Construction Group, Slingshot Architecture, McClure Engineering, and a couple of other partners as depicted on the screen there. It is shown as a 13-story building with concrete steel frame construction. The building composition, so on the ground floor, they have showed 2,000 square feet of micro retail. You'll see that in the floor plans, and about 3,800 square feet of restaurant, retail, or entertainment space. They do have a letter of interest in their proposal from the Englert as well. They have 5 upper floors of commercial office space, and we'll see how that's kind of divided out within the building. There is a letter of interest from ACT, and they've indicated a willingness to accommodate city uses as well. That team has indicated that if all 5 floors aren't needed, they could shrink the height of the building, or they could expand the number of floors dedicated to residential units as well. Kind of the key component to this building are 7 floors of residential that would include 76 affordable senior units, and they would anticipate utilizing the low-income housing tax credit program to support those residential units. Again, as kind of thought right now, those would be dedicated to the senior population. Their intent is that the tenant's income would average 40 to 80% of the AMI, and at least half the units would be at the 60% area median income. That's the AMI, area median income. With the LIHTC program, you get a minimum of 30 years of affordability, and depending on the ownership structure, certainly we have seen those extend beyond the 30 years in some cases. I talk about this in the memo. There are 2 different LIHTC opportunities. There's a 4% and a 9%. The 4% is what the pro forma is based on in this proposal. If you looked at that, that's an administrative award, meaning it's kind of first come, first serve if you meet the criteria. There's currently about at least a year backlog on those awards here in Iowa. There's also a 9% LIHTC program, which is a more lucrative tax credit. That's done on a competitive process. That's the LIHTC that we're most familiar with here in Iowa City. However, those applications are due to the state in February, so it's unlikely that Iceberg would make that deadline for this project. So I talk about that a little bit in the memo, that when you have a LIHTC project, there's certainly lots of advantages in terms of leveraging outside dollars. but it does oftentimes require quite a bit of patience and sometimes multiple years of applications to be selected if you are fortunate enough to be selected.
Along that same line, because there are other funding sources that could be sought after. Light tech, as you mentioned, typically requires 30 years. If, for some reason, the city did grant the $2 million lot purchase as well as a TIF for $7 million and $10 million, somewhere in there, can we require a longer affordability period if that is a part of our contingency?
Yes, you can. I mean, we own the property. We can require anything we want to. Now, the question becomes: is it feasible? Right? Does that make the project in some way unattainable? Those would be discussions that we would have to have with the team, and that's going to really apply to all of the proposals. And whether we're talking affordable housing, whether we're talking about tenants who may need rental subsidies or build-out assistance. When we talk about climate action components of the building, all of those things we can absolutely push on, and we can ask for more. But at some point, the numbers start to fall apart. As we get through this process, one of the things that we'll look for the council are, what priorities are rising to the top? What opportunities are you seeing in these proposals that are most exciting? And we will absolutely work hard to ensure whatever those are. If it's permanent affordability, we would work to do that with all of the proposals.
And Iceberg is like they are only focusing on senior units, or they are open to.
Correct. I think they could potentially be open. They have specifically proposed senior units, and we did not engage them on family units. But again, I think the team would be open to that. It's probably more of a reflection on how they saw the market in downtown and thought that the senior housing would be in higher demand, but I'm sure they're open to that discussion. Staff has estimated the total valuation at $24 million. That may seem a little low based on the scale of the property, but LIHTC projects are taxed a little bit differently, so it brings down the overall valuation during the compliance period. Also puts it on the commercial side, which is good for us, so the taxable valuation is a little bit higher, but the overall valuation may seem a little bit low, but that's where we've estimated that to be. The proposal, again, is based on a 4% LIHTC, and they've suggested a $2 million lot purchase with a need for about $7 to $10 million in TIF, which, based on that valuation number, we would expect to take anywhere from 8 to 12 years to pay off at that 100% level. If they shift to the competitive LIHTC, that 9%, which again is harder to achieve, that could lower the TIF significantly and change that overall financial picture for this project.
Is there a sense of how, you said significantly, is there a ballpark on, or is it too early to?
I think more than half would be our expectation. Both teams would obviously try to get that to zero, but I'm not sure if that's financially viable. This does not include subsidies for any other uses. So I mentioned the Englerton has a letter of interest in there. In talking with the Englert, we know regardless of what proposal it's in, they're probably going to need some help with build out and with perhaps a rental subsidy going forward. So all those things are just factors that can push up or down on that TIF request. Okay, we'll look at some of the architectural conceptual renderings that were submitted. This was submitted just to show the context of a 13-story building within the downtown. So calling out the 7-story neighbors here with the Vogel House. You've got Plaza Towers at 14. You've got Park at 201 with 14, and so on. We'll get into some of the floor plans. There was not any parking proposed on this, so leaning on our existing parking facilities. You can see the ground floor concept here. Here's that entertainment space. They listed it as restaurant/live music venue or anchor retail. So you see they're still very flexible in which way that would go. And then you see that micro retail down on Linn Street right here. And by micro retail, we're just talking about smaller square footages. We're not talking about any type of subsidized space, but by the nature of being small, it's going to be more affordable entry point for retailers. Again, it's not reflected as subsidized space in the pro forma. You can see you've got both the office and residential lobby here. So floors 2 and 3, they had identified for city office space. Again, should we choose not to do this, these floors could be eliminated or potentially converted into the residential units.
In this proposal, no one will, it's not going to be condoed out, so it will all be rental, even for the city?
No, I don't think that's known at this time. It could be condoed out. So for example, are you talking this proposal specifically?
Yes.
Okay, then it probably would not be condoed out under this. The other, except maybe the commercial spaces, right? But the residential pieces would likely not be.
What about the city space if that's become city?
Correct. So the city, if we wanted to own our own office space in any one of these proposals, we could absolutely do that. We wouldn't have to lease it. I think we would have the flexibility to work with the teams to figure out what the best option is. This is the housing levels, so it goes from level 4. The only difference being level 4 is where some of the amenity space would be. You see a community room here, you see a patio and amenity space out here, and then the upper floors would all have the same floor plan here. The top level is shown as the ACT office space. So this would be a similar setup to what we have at the Park at 201. The Park at 201 is on the north end of the Ped Mall, right on Blackhawk Mini Park. It has a couple floors of office and then residential and then another office level at the very top. This would follow kind of a similar type of offering with this space. Any questions on the Iceberg one right now? Okay, we're going to talk about the Salida Partners proposal, which also includes Shive Hattery, Skydeck Capital, and Simeon Talley. And we'll walk you through that proposal. This is the most kind of defined proposal that we saw, the most level of detail, particularly on that first floor. So you have 6,900 square feet of flex entertainment, micro kind of kitchen, you have micro retail, and an art alley. The proposal describes it in great detail, talks about it being the community living room, and the space has been dubbed Billy's at this time. It's clear that there would be a partnership with the Englert on that space. The first floor would also include the primary entrance for the upper level Stories project. So there's about 9,000 square feet on upper levels for the Stories project, with an opportunity for them to grow over time if needed, and also has office and commercial space in these upper floors. Quite a bit of mix of housing here, 5 upper floors of residential. We see 26 market rate units, 6 affordable units, and 14 short-term stay. There is a letter of interest from the Housing Fellowship for the affordable units, and we also see that letter of interest from the University of Iowa International Writing Program in this proposal as well. I skipped over the Stories project pretty quickly, but there is a lot of detail in the Salida Partners proposal. So as you spend some more time looking at this, if you're interested in learning more about the Stories project concept, I would encourage you to look at that Salida Partners proposal for that level of detail. And we can answer questions about that if you've got those ready tonight. We estimate the total valuation to be about $37 million, and the team has proposed a lot transfer of $1, so essentially no-cost land transfer, and they would anticipate needing the full TIF that's generated off the property for as many years as possible. Probably, we would say probably in that 15 to 20 years range based on what we can see in this. There was two different pro formas submitted, one that had kind of market rate users in there. So if we didn't subsidize that space for Stories or for Englert, there is a remaining gap of around $1 million that's estimated. And when you get into subsidizing that space for some of those prioritized users, that gap grows upwards of about the $5 million level there. We'll go through some of the images that were submitted. There's a art alley concept that's prominent in this one, and you can see that in this lower right-hand picture here. A couple of the elevations. You do see the underground parking. Okay, and we'll walk you through some of the floor plans again. This is the underground parking level right here. Then you move into that first floor. Again, a lot of detail on this proposal. There is a two-story venue back here. That's the Englert kind of performance venue, all tied in together to this Billy's space. And you see some of those micro kitchen units here designed to be, again, very accessible entry points for food providers that would work together with the Englert on the operation of this space. The art alley sits out in this area here. And then those micro retail spaces, even smaller than what you saw in the iceberg proposal here at 300 square feet, would sit here on Linn Street. The Stories project entrance kind of comes in on the corner of the property right here. That second level, again, we've got the performance venue that's 2 stories back here, so there's a balcony area. You can see the Stories project, which is spread out over a couple of floors to start, sits in this area back here. And then there's a kind of an emerging artist gallery seating area to round out that second floor. The third floor has the remainder of the Stories space, as well as flexible office space. And then the fourth and fifth would include offices for the city should, again, we need to or want to pursue that particular option. The sixth level and seventh, eighth, and ninth show the residential footprints right here. And then there is an upper floor roof and pavilion patio that's really designed to bolster the offerings of the Englert and the Stories project, or host other special events that are held in the building. Any questions on the Salida Partners proposal? Okay. This is the same table that is in your memo. And all the proposals I should have mentioned up front are available on the website now at icgov.org/21slin, so you can reference that as well. I won't walk through these. We just walked through these, but I think this is helpful for the discussion. So the staff is recommending that we move forward with public presentations of the Grand Rail and Iceberg proposals. And I do want to note that the Salida Partners proposal is very impressive. And it's very clear that they put a lot of time into trying to understand what the public input that we gathered really was calling for, and they responded very well to that. But at the end of the day, we really did not feel that they presented a financially viable proposal And we were pretty clear in the RFP that we really wanted to try to produce a property tax generating building that was going to be also kind of fiscally supporting of the city. And with the inability to pay for any of the land or recoup any of our land cost and a full encumbrance of TIF, with a remaining gap that would have to be plugged in some way, shape, or form, we really felt that it fell short of that objective, as inspiring as it is. And I completely unintentionally missed letting you know that they proposed a mass timber building, which would be kind of an incredible construction technology to bring to Iowa City. It's an emerging sustainable construction technique that the state of Iowa has seen very little of. I think Des Moines, there's a project or two, but I should have mentioned that when I walked you through their property there. But at the end of the day, we just didn't think it was a viable project. And in the effort of really focusing in on the two that we felt were viable, we are recommending that we not pursue any further with Salida on their proposal. Let's see. One thing I did want to stress again. So what I recommend, for a next step is to invite the teams that you wish to come forward and present publicly. I can present you a summary, you can read it in paper, but I can tell you hearing the teams that developed the proposal present it and allowing them to introduce themselves to you brings a whole nother dimension to the vision and to the project that I think you would find beneficial, and I think that the public would find beneficial when giving you their input on which direction that you should go. So I do think that's the next step when you are ready for that. And then lastly, again, just keep in mind that at this stage, I think all the teams are indicating some level of flexibility, and it is an opportunity for you to see these and react in ways that can more clearly express where your strongest priorities are. And once you get to the point where you can select a preferred concept to move forward with, we would work with that team to try to make sure that we can meet those top priorities for you while still producing a viable project for the team as well. So I think we'll end it there. I'll leave this up for discussions. And let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll just turn it back to you.
Can you remind me how much was the land again?
$4.5 million.
And if we want to sell the land that today, how much it will be?
Well, that depends if, how we want to steer the project. We felt, and I still feel like $4.5 million, the property would have sold for that amount. And we probably would have seen one of the groups that were inquiring with us about it come in and get it. So it would probably be a student housing type of project. Would be our best guess, and I think we could recoup that cost.
The value of the land. That's
$4.5 million is my best estimate at this time. So when we're looking at these proposals, they're producing something that the market may not otherwise produce, which was our goal. And we may not recoup all of our cost in doing that. Each one of these projects in that way is subsidized. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I want to convert it. So what we giving and how much we getting from them, so we can choose which project, yeah?
And as we start to have conversations, I do wonder, everyone has presented their proposals, and, that public process has been closed for other people. So what is the wiggle room or boundaries that we would have if someone, because I hear they are willing to hear counsel and willing to present something based on some of our discussion today. But if it's significantly changed, I guess I need to know what those parameters are, or are there any?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we should expect that these projects will evolve, right? This could take years to get from the RFP stage to a construction stage, right? We still have probably a year at least of design work to do, or the teams would have that type of work. So market conditions will change. And again, opportunities may change. There could be an office user that all of a sudden is interested in downtown, which may expand the need for commercial office space in this particular location. There could be a particular retailer or something else that comes forward. So some of that's going to change, and we should expect that. Construction costs will change, right? We're certainly kind of in those discussions now as tariffs are being pursued. So, this is a moment in time snapshot that is the best kind of proposal, but we have to expect that's going to change. I would say even bringing in new partners to the teams, right? I think the principal structure needs to stay the same, but some of these teams may find new partners that help them further their goals. I think that's okay, but there will be a time, Mayor, and I'm not sure if I can define that really well, in which the project changes so much that it's not consistent with what was originally proposed, and that's where I would have a concern. So I'm just going to use an example here, maybe to help illustrate this. If the Iceberg project came back and said, LIHTC's probably not going to work. We'd rather do, a major shift in the housing offering. That's a pretty big change, and that fundamentally changes how we would have assessed that initially. I think we'd have to have some conversations about that. But if they were to shift from a senior LIHTC to a non-senior or a kind of family LIHTC, as we refer to it, I wouldn't view that as a substantive change.
I would add, Mayor, that I think since we're just selling land, we really do have a free hand for negotiating with the proposers, as City Manager has described. I would say the only kind of guardrail is if for some reason the council were to upend the criteria by which the proposals were made, that would probably not be fair to those who maybe chose not to propose because they saw that we were offering those constraints. So short of something like that, which I would not anticipate, I think you're free to do what you wish.
It seems too that what has come before us, has done so much due diligence in terms of thinking about what we put out in the RFP. And as you said, Geoff, where it was like, and I think you actually mentioned it at one point too, where it's like, we gave enough shape to something, but then how that was expressed is in 3 very different projects. And so I think that as council, as we talk about it, we want to make sure that we don't just sort of redesign the projects at, Frankenstein, Frankenfurter kind of put like, oh, that's good and piece it all together, because so much work has gone into this based on the homework that's been done. So, I mean, I just say that to council because it doesn't sound like that's a legal constraint necessarily. It does impact feasibility, but it seems also to give credence to the work that has been done, because it took months and months to develop these plans. So we want to, I'm not saying that we take them whole cloth. I love that there's the flexibility of like, what are the needs? What do we understand needs to be as well? But to sort of redesign from within a project seems kind of unfair
I think
and not true to the way that the RFP was put out. So I just.
I'll add to that, the months of their design which followed our months of deliberations on what things we were looking for. Yeah, I think if we decide to change what we decided at the very beginning, that's one thing. I'll just quickly comment and compliment all 3 of these groups. When I heard we had 3 proposals, I was like, oh, I was kind of hoping for more. And I no longer, after I got a chance to really look at these, I don't feel the least bit disappointed. I just wish we had 3 street corners that were open. Because I think they were all very different, but there were components of each one that I thought were jumped out at me as unique advantages, and it wasn't, it was different kinds of things. So I actually do see a little bit of that Frankenstein mix and match, and whatever direction we go, because whichever one we go as a council, there'll be other ideas that hopefully they'll be able to incorporate. And I think it was also interesting that a lot of them had some overlap in possible partners. I think that speaks to some really positive things about our community and community institutions and organizations and people that pop up in a couple of different places on here. And I just think I found that to be really encouraging. So I mean, just again, thank you to all of the groups that put this together, the outside groups that were looking at it and offering support or possible deals. I'm really excited about that. So.
And when we're supposed to choose this one? Like today? Not today, right?
I think it's whenever you're
Not
comfortable.
today.
You certainly don't need to choose a proposal now. I think your next steps would be identifying which ones that you want to hear more from at this time, understanding that you are asking them to commit more resources and more time and more energy to it. Staff has recommended that you hear directly from the Grand Rail and Iceberg teams, but ultimately that's your decision on which teams you hear for, and I think that's the next step. I wouldn't even suggest you do a whole lot of picking apart these proposals at this stage, because I do feel like it's important that you hear directly from the teams that spent the many hours preparing this. They can tell their story a lot better than I can represent their story here before you. So that is probably the next step, whether tonight or at your next work session, is to say, let's move forward with team A, B, C, whatever configuration that needs to be.
To come and present.
To come and present, just information.
Not like, okay.
What would be a reasonable amount of time, whether it would be tonight or our next work session, which I'd be kind of leaning towards the next work session. After that, what would be a reasonable amount of time to give these groups to prepare a presentation? I'm guessing that's, because as you say, if we ask for that for another group, we need to be serious about them as serious contenders, and because they're going to put some more time and effort into it. And so,
yeah, at this point, we're not asking them to change anything. So I think they're probably ready to go with the 2 weeks notice, if 2 to 3 weeks between council meetings. So if you told me tonight that you're ready to move forward and you know who you want to hear from, then as long as they're available to present at your next meeting, we could do it at your next meeting.
And we say next meeting, but if it's okay, the next 1 or 2 meetings. Just we need to look at the work session.
But we want like each meeting, one of them to come and present.
You
If we
could,
just
I
do,
would
for
do it both
example.
at one time. I would recommend you do both at one time, or even if you choose all three at one time. If that means flexing your work schedule, your work session time a little bit, that's fine. We can give them time parameters, right? I don't want to give each group an hour. You're going to want to say, we're going to have 20-minute presentations or whatever time allotted is needed. But I would recommend that you keep them all at the same cadence and you don't give one team extra time to prepare or react to something a previous team said.
oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
And it'd be good to compare side by side. I would find that useful.
Then both of them, if not next meeting, the meeting after, but I think next meeting should be
Yeah, I think if we are having, appreciate the 3 that have submitted. Very impressed by some of the items and some of what they presented. Of course, there are some questions about some of the things, especially when it comes down to what the city is being asked essentially for subsidies. But with that being said, if we're saying that we would entertain some changes to, even the 2 that the city or that the staff has recommended, then I think it would only be fair that all 3 have that same opportunity if there's potential for change. I understand that when they present, they're going to be presenting what's here. Can they, I guess this is up to the council, can they even say, this is what we might think about altering? Are people,
I think given that we're talking about them just presenting on what they mostly have done, that makes a lot of sense to see all three. I do think that, given the flexibility, I like the idea of having them all in the same room, honestly, and being, the degree to which we've talked about wanting to encourage collaboration and sort of sharing of ideas. And this is a very public process. And so I like the idea of having them all do that presentation just to potentially spark more, something more collaborative that could come.
In the spirit in which I think you were, the spirit in which I think you were talking is that they get the opportunity to see the presentations of each other, which may spark ideas and may be able to move forward with some potential changes. I'm less inclined to say that essentially on the fly they would talk about, and we could incorporate this or this or this. I would want to just hear what they have and allow everyone within the teams to be able to hear what everyone has and then see where that goes, as opposed to having them project or speculate about potential changes that they could incorporate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting here saying that we're open to flexibility.
Absolutely.
And I even heard the word collaboration. Maybe there is some opportunity to, because, there are some things I like about all of them that I wish was in one proposal. So if we're talking about that right now, I think it would be very challenging not for them to just present what's there, especially, for the one that's not being recommended by staff. If they're just presenting what's there, we have a huge deficit that they're going to be presenting on. So I guess personally, I think I'm comfortable with them, certainly presenting, making the case of how they can bring this opportunity to the city. But if they felt like they can cram something in within their 20-minute time of some hope from this conversation, I'm comfortable with that.
That's what I was going to say is I think they're all listening right now,
Yeah.
right? And so-
Well, I guess it's a matter of, I think of it as more of a matter of what is their comfort level in doing it? Is it essentially fair to ask them to do that? Because this is essentially, whether it's 2 weeks or what have you, that is having to pivot pretty quickly from things that they've been working on for months. So I do take your point, and I know that they're all listening and that there will be probably some conversations, but I would hate that in a way that there's that extra thing that we want, and if a team isn't comfortable or able to respond in such a quick pivot, that would actually end up, I don't know. I think that there's opportunities, and they don't need to necessarily have it here. There could be some we like the idea of X, Y, and Z in terms of future looking and ways that we could pivot, but I guess to maybe keep it at a high level.
Sure.
And I see some of that conversation happening after we hear this presentation, right? Because
Yes,
I have,
that's-
I've got in my mind already a list of things all the way from aesthetic, all the way to the dollars and cents, to the construction,
Yes.
all of those things. But I feel like to start going off down those tangents now before they have a chance to present what's there. And then ultimately, it'll probably be which of these three is closest and would need the least amount of changes to hit whatever, after I have more time to think about it, would hit with the things I like. And then they can incorporate those, maybe some of those other things, So, that's kind of my, having had since Thursday to look over these, that's where I'm at currently. But that's probably what I foresee, because like I said, there's definitely things I like and dislike about each one. I think they're all overall really cool. But yeah, no, I don't really want to say too much more until we let them have a chance to talk without having to filter through and trying to play their guessing game. Or what are those trying to second guess what those 5 people up there on the council dais want between now and 2 weeks from now or 5 weeks from now, whatever.
I do think there's been tremendous value, though, and I want to commend staff on, like, just sort of forcing the scoping of subsidy through this process, right? By even just making that recommendation of saying 3 really good, cool projects, one that is asking so much financially of us, we don't foresee being able to support that. I think even that exercise has been really, really helpful.
And even if we, like, for example, went by the staff recommendation of the one not asking like too much subsidy, I guess when I look at those two, when it comes to height, it's completely different. Like you said earlier, Jeff said earlier, there is some changes could be easy change from like taking seniors to, but there is major change sometime. Are they open to those like major change? And that's why we need to hear from them.
Yep.
So I think we're kind of all saying the next work session that we can devote the whole work session? Or, I don't mean like next time,
Yeah.
necessarily. The next time it fits, we can have a whole
Right,
work session
right.
to devote to it. I don't know what's, is
I
that?
could check with the teams and see. Obviously, we want to make sure that they feel like they have the time. I don't know their vacation schedules or other project schedules that could be pressing for them. So we would try to get it done either the next meeting in February or the first meeting in March. And I'll just work with the teams to figure out, I think, what would be best.
Great.
And we'll try, I'll try to, I want to make sure I capture this right. I'll try to limit the amount of kind of flexibility discussion, or did you land the other direction to where if they have ideas on responding to different needs, that they should feel free to articulate those? Are you?
I think what I heard was we're open to whatever they're comfortable
Okay.
with.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
that there's not
Well, that's good
pressure
because
to do it, but yeah.
I think a lot of the team, I think all the teams have indicated flexibility, so we'll let them kind of express that in their own words, and we'll go forward. My understanding, you want to allow all 3 teams to present, and is that 20 to 25-minute range sound reasonable?
I like the idea of keeping it consistent. Do we want to also program in a certain amount of time for Q&A? So we don't end up with somebody who presents for 20 and gets 20 minutes of Q&A, and then the next person is out of time because we've run out of work
So
session time,
you're
and they have to go
talking about
after.
Actually, guardrails on us?
Whoa.
Wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I would
That
like to see, in the interest of comparing side by side,
Yeah, I
I
think
would
that's a
I would
good
hate for a
point.
third person or a second person or whoever have to go after a regular meeting and some before.
Yeah.
That seems like that would also be, I mean, it's not the end of the world. If it happens, it happens. But if we can avoid that, I'd like to avoid
I
it.
think that would be good.
Yeah, that's
I
a
think
good
that
point.
that seems equitable.
So are we thinking 20 minutes for a presentation and then just allowing 10 minutes for discussion?
Maybe clarification questions, not like,
Yeah, because
That-
we
Yeah.
could go.
Yeah.
just the clarification. Like, I
You
was
mean
confused by this.
30
What did you
minute
mean?
30-minute per
Per person.
Total of 30 minutes per.
Total.
Total.
total, which is 20-10. What is it? Yeah.
And if, I could come and even start like a half an hour early. I teach on Tuesdays, so I can't come too much early, but I could be here half an hour early if that would be helpful to the group. I'm just going to toss that out there. I'm not saying we have to do that.
I guess what we can do is check in with people, check in with council and see if that is possible for you all as well. Okay? All right, I think
Okay.
we're good. Thank you. Anything else on this topic from council? If not,
Hearty thanks.
we are adjourned from
Thank
our
you.
work session. All right.